Tonight, a discussion 10 years after the April 27th, 2011 tornado outbreak, and a Mexican perspective on what's to come in the tropics in 2021. Hello and welcome back to WeatherBeat, our first production of WeatherBeat in quite some time actually. We've been trying to get it going more and more, but here we are once again, another April, here we are with the WeatherBeat, the latest information on what's been going on around the world of weather, with several of our team members who will be appearing on this particular event and in the future. We're hoping to do this now regularly on Wednesdays, but I've said that before and it didn't come to be, but hopefully it will this time. Well, first up tonight we've got obviously it's just past the anniversary of the big tornado outbreak that occurred on April 27th, 2011. 10 years, would you believe, since that trail of destruction occurred across the central United States. And to talk with me about that right now is Alfiria, and you've been looking at that and studying it very closely because you've been making a production on it, haven't you?
I have my story with the 27th and the super outbreak in general is I was in one of the tornado warnings that day, and so I walked out of my room at about 2 o'clock in the morning, needing to use the restroom, and saw my dad just sitting on top of the couch looking outside. Didn't think any of it, went back to bed, and then I woke up the next morning, saw on TV, I think it was the Ringgold tornado that was on screen on my local news channel, and I'm like, huh. And then as more footage came in of what happened the day before, I'm just like, that looks interesting. And
now,
that's where this whole weather obsession started.
Now, could you remind everyone whose memories might be a little bit rusty now? I know I personally remember it as it was, but not really the actual specifics. So how many tornadoes were there? How deadly were they? And which areas got hit the worst?
We had in total about 360 tornadoes, give or take, from the span of the 25th to the 28th. And really, the 25th and 26th mainly saw it mainly around Arkansas, and then the 27th was mainly Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, Western Georgia. And going into the 28th, it was basically the entire East Coast, but we didn't really see much tornado development in the afternoon hours of the 28th. It was mostly into the overnight hours going as the system moved its way through Georgia, going up the East Coast.
So a 3-day event that occurred then?
It was more of a 4-day event.
4 days.
3 days, 7 hours.
3 or 4, depending where. But which were the places, the locations that were worst affected by that? You obviously, we hear about some of the, you might call them legendary tornadoes that struck populated areas that occurred in this particular outbreak. Which ones occur to you?
Because I went over every major EF4 and 5, with the exception of one EF4 that happened in the middle of nowhere and lasted for about 20 minutes. And so I couldn't find footage or anything about it, and so I'm like, I'm just not going to do this. The systems that really struck out to me were Hackleburg, Phil Campbell, Smithville, Philadelphia, Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, Coleman, Cordova, Rainsville, which is the least well-known EF5, simply because of it wasn't rated that until about a month after the outbreak happened. And then Ringgold, simply because of where it was, because I live in the state of Georgia. It's pretty big here. And those were the major ones. The Enterprise was also one of those tornadoes that formed in Mississippi, and we had a lot of damage associated with it, mainly because it was on the ground for nearly 3 hours.
Gosh, that's incredible. You do get some of those really long tracking ones. So tell us about the actual video production. What inspired you to make it in the first place?
Well, what inspired me was a couple different things. So I've talked about the outbreak before the recent video I did a total of about 5 to 4 times already. Either it be for school or just because I want to. And about 2 years ago, I made a documentary on the 27th. And to be quite blunt with you, it sucked. And the YouTube algorithm was like, hey, let's push this video that you don't like whatsoever out into people's recommendations. And I'm like, please no. And so I made the decision in about early February to just say, I'm just going to unlist this. And the video has been deleted from the site because I just don't find there to be a purpose of it there. I saved the thumbnail for it because that was the basis for the thumbnail for the new one. And I kind of looked at it and I said, I can do a lot better. And after this tornado season, with what we've had gone down and what I've learned, I'm like, I can probably make a better, more concise video. And so that began the script writing process, which was mainly just me going through my original script from 2 years ago, along with the notes, because I had a Google Doc of the notes I took.
Wow.
Most of them were just links to National Weather Service pages, because that's where most of the information comes from. And I got all the information down, and I just kind of got my information as I went along, using Wikipedia as a basis to gather my sources. And that's where I went from there. And of course, because the National Weather Service and NOAA were like, hey, let's just do an entire website makeover and like make it so that half of our old links don't work anymore. It meant that I had to use a lot of web archive.
That does happen quite a lot. So your video, it's something like, was it 18 minutes long, or
25?
25, longer than that then. And that's online. Where can people find that?
They can find it on my channel. It should be one of my friends yelled at me saying that the title was bad, and so I just changed it to 360 Tornadoes in 4 Days, the April 2011 Super Outbreak, because algorithm stuff. It should be on my main channel, which...
We'll put out the link at the bottom of our screen here as well as we go along, just so that people can get to there. But that's something that you've been pretty passionate about in the last few weeks. It's taken you a while to make, hasn't it?
Yeah, so the script itself took about, I'd say about, in regards to how long it took to write, anywhere from like 2 to 4 hours. But that was also me scouring through National Weather Service pages and going through web archives and fact-checking myself.
Yep.
And then I gave myself a week to get people from the team to... trying to remember what the word, to proofread and fact check. And then I also got my close personal friends who normally do my proofreading for my non-weather stuff to proofread for grammar. And
so serious quality assurance there.
Yeah. Basically, I didn't want another situation where people were yelling at me because of the fact that I said some things and I said things weird and I forgot to cut it out, and people were like, oh my god, you're doing misinformation! And so I didn't want to deal with that. And I'm also like, if anybody comments about how I didn't cover a tornado that hit their house, I am going to lose it. And I'm not even like talking about like a strong one, I'm talking about like an EF0. And so, because I got a couple of those comments on my original video from 2 years ago. And while I was doing that, I was working on video assets. Not a lot, but it was mainly because you could probably show it on screen here. There were these little PowerPoint slide looking things where like you would have like the header and a certain color to the header. So it'd be like red, and then it would say the name of the tornado. So it'd be like Tuscaloosa, Birmingham. And then there'd be a gray text box on the side that would say all the information about it, damage, wind speed, category, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the middle right part of the screen was a green screen. And the reason why that was put there was so I could put the footage there using green screen footage things using my editor. And that asset making didn't take very long. I did find out that Wikipedia had a lovely little link to a storm data analysis report from NOAA from 2011 that had a list of all the damages that were done. And so I just kind of was like, well, at least I have most of the cost information.
That must have taken them ages to put together. We'll have to break away in a moment, but just looking forward to this season, are you following that closely, how it's gone so far?
Yeah, and I've been looking at this season, and I'm just like, April died,
It did.
March, and I'm just like, March was way more interesting than it had any right to be.
Yep, certainly did. And looking towards May, do you think it will pick back up?
It looks like it might pick back up, and that's what we're expecting. We're hoping for the best, expecting the worst, though.
As always seems to be the case, doesn't it? Alfiria, thank you very much for taking part and letting us know about that production. So you can find that on his YouTube channel, and the link should be somewhere on the screen around about now. The wonders of doing pre-records. But there we have it. Thank you very much. And now let's take a look at what's been going on around the wide world of weather in the last week. Flash flood warnings are in effect this evening in parts of Arkansas and Missouri, with significant flooding possible elsewhere in neighboring states as severe weather grips the plains and the central part of the United States. Flash flood warnings are also in effect in Barbados, particularly the northern parish of St Andrew. What used to be Super Typhoon Surigay is now near the Aleutian Islands in the North Pacific, now a extratropical cyclone, a very large one, although weakening at this point with only marginal gale force winds. This storm was an impressive Super Typhoon Category 5 just a few short days ago. And you can share with us the weather in your backyard by sending any media to our online platforms, contact@force13.com. So, now that we are looking at the start of the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific hurricane season, let's take another perspective on what's to come. It's not been that long since we released our April forecasts on Force 13. That was around 2 weeks ago. But looking at it from a Mexican perspective is our very own César Gamez, who we've not seen for so long. It's great to see you once again, César. How are you doing?
Oh my God, Nathan. Actually, yes, it has been quite a few time ago, but I'm glad to be back again, like for the fifth or sixth time in a row. I'm doing really good, Nathan. Thank you. And yes, we have seen the most intense activity in the Atlantic hurricane, well, the most active Atlantic hurricane season in the last year, and the
Yep.
Eastern Pacific has been the least active since 2010, but still with quite few good amount of storms. So it's going to be a really interesting season this year in both sides, of course. Mexico actually is always having the risk of hurricane impact on both sides. Everybody knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And well, it's going to be a really interesting year. So let's see what's going to happen.
Well, we look at it again right now, and we've still got the prevailing La Nina that's still going on. Do we think that that's going to completely simmer down and go away during this year, or do you think it'll stay strong, and that would probably mean another quiet Pacific hurricane season?
Well, looking of what happened the last year, I don't think La Nina is going to be as much as intense as it was the last year. I think we will see possibly a, a bit of more activity than the last year, but not
Yeah.
that much, you know?
Yeah.
Possibly we could see a few more intense storms than the last year.
Now, I don't know if you saw our predictions on April 12th, but we had, particularly on the Pacific side, the Gulf of California was the hotspot that we marked down for this year. What do you think about that?
I think it's a pretty fair forecast because the last year, actually, the Gulf of California was a very active spot. We saw in the last year Hurricane Alida, we saw Tropical Storm Fausto, Genevieve,
Genevieve.
Hernan, Isel,
Yeah.
uh, well, pretty much storms, that were passing really close to the Baja California Peninsula. And this is quite rare to see,
Mm-hmm.
strange to see. And I think it's going to be the same this year, pretty much.
All right, and we had some rumblings. I know we were just talking about this off air, and I think it's the first you know of this, but models a few days ago were predicting potential impacts for, well, possibly impacts for the coast of Mexico, but the first storm of the season to form within, say, the next 2 weeks. Now, when we were looking earlier in the year towards the climatological patterns and all that, it was suggesting there's some signals, not really strong signals, but the possibility that we might get one of those really early season type storms that makes landfall much further to the east. You know, like there's two in the past. One of them is Agatha, and there was another one that I forget the name of now. Do we think that anything like that might happen? One of these awkward storms that form further east early on.
Well, it's actually strange to see, but it's not impossible. You know, the last year was Amanda, which made landfall in, if I'm not mistaken, in El Salvador and Guatemala as well. I mean, it's really strange to see that happen 2 years in a row, but it's not
Gee.
impossible.
And that became Cristobal,
Uh,
of course.
exactly, and you know, it was the first storm of the second cyclonic system of the season last year, the first named storm, and could be the same scenario this year. Not discardable at all.
Now, what do you think of what we predicted for the Atlantic? The Yucatan Peninsula, I think we were going around average chances, but what we really noted for potential this year is storms forming in the Bay of Campeche and moving up towards the northwest, and maybe affecting Tamaulipas and into the United States.
Well, if 2021 season gets active, of course we will see much activity from the Gulf of Mexico and Bay of Campeche and Yucatan Peninsula Caribbean side. Sort of activity like last year that was pretty intense, the most intense activity in those regions since what I can say 2005, 2007, possibly.
In the which area? The Caribbean.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's hard to compare that one. Yeah, it is a bit like 2005, I suppose. I mean, we almost had a Wilma when was it Delta failed to reach Category
Yeah,
5 status.
it was Delta.
The Yucatan got really badly hit
Really,
last year, wasn't
yeah, by Delta, Zeta, Gamma, and well, a few more storms in the
I
past, of
can't
course.
remember any of these names. I'm quite relieved that they're changing from the Greek alphabet. What did you think when you
Yeah.
heard about that?
Oh my God, I can't express how happy I feel about retirement of the Greek alphabet, because for me it has been always a useless system, to be
Useless.
honest. And I'm so sorry for being so direct in my
Oh
comments, but
no, that's your opinion.
but but I mean it doesn't mean anything. And actually, the rotating list, it's a good thing, but I endorse more the fact of using the whole naming list. Like, if the last storm of the season ends in,
Okay.
let's put an example, on Marco, then the first storm of the next season is going to be Nana, you know? Empty all the list and rotate all the list by using all the names available, not just like the alphabetical order than like we do here. More
Yeah.
like it's used in the Western Pacific
Yep.
naming system on the Australian region and such.
I think I'm with you on that one. It seems to make the most sense, but then I don't know. I mean, you'll get the people thinking, but then why would it be important for people to think, oh, we're up to the end named storm? It's quite a busy season. I mean, that doesn't really matter, I suppose. But there we have it. That will be an argument for another time, the naming. But I
Yeah.
think they've done a decent thing with that. And finally, in the Atlantic, then, do you think it will be really busy like last year, and do you think we'll see another Category 5?
Well, we've been having Category 5s hurricanes since 2016. So I don't know if I can bet like 2021 not having a Category 5. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a busy season, not as active as 2020 was.
I
It's
should
really
think so.
difficult to. I mean, 2020 was really difficult to surpass the 2005 season. 2021, I think it's going to be at least top 10 more active seasons. So
Regarding the Category
it's
5,
going
though,
to
if I
be.
could say it right now, I would, it's very, very difficult to call, but I would just about be on the side of there probably will be a Category 5 this year.
Well, let's bet it's going to be another Category 5 hurricane like the last 5, 6 years. As we can't bet which name is going to receive that mysterious Category 5
I mean,
hurricane.
that's me saying probably a 55-45 ratio that it might happen. So everyone will be running around in circles over there in the comment section saying, "Oh my goodness, they just said it." But, it's all about probabilities, and it's a very uncertain one.
Yeah, the weather is always unpredictable, and of course we are experiencing something historical, at least in the history of meteorology. So another Category 5 in the Atlantic hurricane at this stage, at this point, this period of time, it's not practically rare to see, fortunately.
Now,
But
Cesar, you've been. I just wanted to end on a personal note. You've been away from us for a little while, but you have been one of our longest standing participants. You've been here since 2015, which is when we first started live events. So, what do you spend your time doing now, away from all of us lot?
well, it's been really interesting. All the things I've been doing away from Force 13. Of course, I still track storms, not at the same intensity as I did before. Right now, I'm more doing radio broadcasts, um, spending more time with family and friends since we are away. It's really difficult to uh, well to organize the schedule of
Yes.
of which things I should do with certain people. Of course, I've been spending more time preparing myself for a professional life.
Yeah.
Being more independent, more away from my family, and start to looking for my own, living on my own.
Well, there we go.
It's so well. It's That's why I've been a little bit away from 413, but that doesn't mean my contributions here it's going to end soon. I actually love meteorology. I love tracking storms. I love being here. So
Well, I was just going to say you're going to be on for Spanish updates again this year, right?
that's right. I since still for since Force 13 is still growing, I feel like a responsibility to contribute on that, which means expanding Force 13 in more public in other language. Since I speak Spanish is my mother language. I think it's a huge chance to expand this project in other horizons for the Latin American community in meteorology. So let's hope this project gets successful as well in the Spanish language, of course.
Well, I mean, it's not about success really. It's about reaching people, and very important that we do that in the Central American countries. A lot of the predominant language Spanish there, in the Caribbean as well. But Cesar, thank you very much for being with us. We've got a little choppy signal just a little bit there at the end, but it's been great to see you, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
Hopefully, yes, Nathan. I'm really glad to be back, and of course, getting ready for a new hurricane season is going to be a really interesting one, of course, since the current times we are living right now. But it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
No problem. And of course, just for your information, If you weren't aware already, the Atlantic hurricane season starts June the 1st, and tropical weather bulletins will be beginning on the Force 13 main channel on May 15th. Yes, slightly earlier than last time. We wanted to do that last time, but we didn't quite get there. But there we go. That's what's coming up soon. There'll be a big round of applause from somewhere in the distance. But that was César and the outlook for the Atlantic and Pacific. As well as the Force 13 main channel that covers mostly tropical activity, we also have our plethora now of regional channels. The Force 13 US channel, Force 13 UK and Ireland, Force 13 Europe, Force 13 Australia and Oceania, and Force 13 Philippines, all with dedicated teams to provide you with the latest updates for those areas. You can find all of our associated channels on the channels page on the Force 13 YouTube channel page. So for those who haven't seen WeatherBeat before, that's what it's usually like, a little bit more refined, and we're going to be working on that, or at least I am, in the very near future, but we hope definitely to make it a regular feature once again, as it should be, of course, on the Force 13 main channel. So I'll tell you this now, we'll see you next Wednesday for the next episode of WeatherBeat on Force 13. Thanks for watching.